Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's been an incredibly difficult week for the music community, and it felt very important to create some kind of space where we can grieve together, face our sorrow together, hold each other, and start to think a little bit about the way forward and how we can create safe spaces within the creative sector, so that the horrific stories that are coming out now and that the news that broke on Monday never happen again. Tina Scow is hoping to join us. She has had a very urgent commitment come up that she needed to attend to immediately. Lorna Houston is on standby. And before we carry on, there are just a few things I want to mention. That Tea with E is a space of ceremony and healing through music, through story, through facing very, very difficult topics, often light topics, but it's about walking into the wound and not pretending that the wound is not there, and empowering each other to walk through it together. So before I bring Lorna on, the space with tea with E is never sensationalist, but a space really of learning together. And so I ask for that awareness as well, to everyone who's joining us, and I know that there are quite a few people joining us today who aren't regular viewers, just to say that Tea with E is a space of deep respect and humility through song, through story. And we have an hour together. That's what Instagram gives us as a default space to go live. It then kicks out, and what I want to ask, because we very more than likely will not, we will probably go over that hour. So what happens then is that it's ended, I start a new live and invite you all to come back on, and it would be lovely if you could come back on for the next part after Lorna's left, and then Tina Scow will join. Also to say that once that live video is no longer live and it's saved onto Instagram TV, I can't see your comments, and I'm not always able to see them and respond in the conversation. I'd love for you to come back on and share your comments there. So lots and lots of bravery as we go, and I'm going to find Lorna now and call her in. Hi everyone, thanks Malika for joining, and Elna and dear hearts that have been walking this path of life with me. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, beautiful.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Ernestine.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Lorna, firstly, thank you so much for being here. I thought that it was very important to just create a space arriving together with this news, because I think we're all have been in an area of many emotions. There is an echo, so I'm just wondering if you could keep it on, or if maybe your computer's on. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Oh, let me see if it's this. Somebody, I'll just be a second.
I have made a very big mug of tea. I'm probably going to need another before the hour is through.
Hi, sorry.
Hi, I'm hoping the echo in my voice is gone now.
Okay, good.
So I was going to go into this topic on Wednesday. Oh, that echo is still there. Not sure what that is or why it's there. And you have sound off on your side, right, Lorna? Does everyone else hear an echo, or is it just me? Because if it's just me, then I'm happy to just continue.
Not hearing an echo.
Okay, so there's no echo for anyone else. I'm just going to keep talking so we can test that. Cool. It's people are saying that they're hearing an echo.
What might that be?
I am not sure. Is the echo still there though? Is the echo there now on my voice?
Yes, somebody says. And someone else says they can't.
I'm going to carry on because I don't hear the echo anymore. It's gone. Yeah,
now.
it's gone. So
There we go.
You know, before we intellectualize things and we start to talk about looking into the future too much and, you know, policies and protection and how we can prevent this from happening and what, you know, what kind of awareness we need to come in. I wanted firstly just to acknowledge that we are hurting. And that there is a deep grief. I could not go on Wednesday, and normally the slot is at 4 in the week, and I was falling apart, and it was hitting me, because I know that shock comes in stages and grief comes in stages. And I needed to, you know, a friend reminded me that self-care is a feminist act. And so I took that time to just be with that and to honor that. And I remember having this, you know, like a conversation with you, I think it was on Monday, when the news broke publicly in terms of people, you know, everyone now knowing in the papers, TV and all of that kind of thing. I remember talking to you and you saying, because I felt like, my God, how did I not see this? How did I miss these signs? And I think that a lot of people who really had no clue have that, you know, we're sitting with a wave of emotions. It's shock, it's betrayal, you're angry, you're hurting. And for those of us who have had traumatic sexual experiences earlier on in our life, you start to unravel these buttons that get pressed in the body. And it was so good to talk with you that day, because you told me, I'm going to hand actually the conversation over to you, and you can just help us to come down from the cloud of hurt, because like I say, I just want to be in the present moment now, and the fact that there's this deep sadness and often self-paration as well for not stepping in or not knowing or feeling like you've had blind spots.
Yes, and I remember what I said to you. The one is that it's necessary to forgive oneself in order to move through, to acknowledge that if there were things you should have seen, they should have recognized as signs. Forgive yourself that you didn't, because it is now in the past. But you at that time, you genuinely felt like there were no signs. And so the other part is the awareness that predators are very careful, and they build trust before they act. And they don't only build that trust with the people, the vulnerable people that they will make victims of. They also build that trust within the community and the circles that surround them and surround the person, so that they actually, it's a bit like a PR campaign. You know, they make sure that you don't see, because they're clear about their intention. And it's a very sad thing, because when you think further and deeper, what you realize, and what I'm really saying is, there's been an extensive act of betrayal and deceit. You know, when somebody conducts themselves that way, because they know what they're doing. It's the same, we talk about corruption in our country, and people who know that they're going to do some big corruption, like our COVIDpreneurs, they've already put certain things quickly in place, before they actually do the act. But those things are only in place because you're going to do the act. And that's, so it's very hard. It's very hard. It's difficult for people who were present in, you know, just in the general sense of being present, not present for the violence, to understand that, because you think, but sure, and you know, like my experience was so different, and your experience was different. I mean, that's the truth of it. And that's, I think, also why some people feel such a strong sense of denial, that their life this is not congruent with your memories. Your memories of somebody are memories that were positive experiences, illustrated respect, and caring, and that's the truth. That's the memories that you have. But that's simply because the person carefully hid away some other aspects of themselves. So, and was purposeful to present a certain image. And so when we have these experiences, it's not uncommon in the world. It also happens to women. When women marry, sometimes, not always, but some cases of domestic abuse, you will marry somebody that was an amazing person. And the minute you are married, they turn into a monster. But nobody will believe that, because they've presented a particular face to the world. They continue to present that face. And now they have you as, in their mind, you know, a captive audience, to abuse. So it's a similar kind of behavior. And certainly it leaves those in the surrounds devastated, because you don't understand how this has occurred. But that's because you can only work with your memories, you know, so your memories don't bring this forth.
And I think that just as with a death, with a shock of death that hits you when there's been a loss, you go through stages of your grief, and it's okay when that denial is there. You know, soon after, you're going to go through the different stages, and then there's anger and all of that. Before we carry on, and I can still hear that echo, I don't know what it is. Before we carry on, in the space of Tea with E weekly, just to greet everyone and to come together here as a community, I open the candle. Welcoming everyone who's just joined. It's a hard topic we're talking about today. And it's important for us to come out of the shadows with these things that have actually always been in our society, our creative sector, the world, to shed light on it, and to hold on to light in these dark times as well. And to keep showing up every day like the sun comes up with us every single day. Just honoring everyone who's here, and Lorna, who's my guest today. Star will join later. And the reason I brought Lorna in is because, Lorna, you have experience on the ground with, you know, because you did counseling work, but you've also been a leader in restructuring organizations through a process of of rigorous training and preventing sexual abuse, and you're an activist and have been for a long time against child sexual abuse, and I thought that you were the right person to hold us today. Before we carry on, I want to offer a song, and it is one of Tina Scour's songs, Prayers for Heaven, or it could be Prayers to Heaven. Hope she forgives me. And I just want to bring sound here first before we carry on. The soles of my feet touch this holy ground. The source that birthed me, to it I am bound. And the air it breathes me caresses my naked skin. I breathe it in and out, and in and out, and in and out again. And then I press my face up to the sky and offer prayer down here and high. Is there a blessing coming to us? And from my mouth a burning pyre of prayers I share for you and I. Please receive this, my prayer from heaven.
Thank you. It's so beautiful. I think one of the things in this time, not just about this issue of sexual violence that's come to light, but also just the COVID period, need for spiritual support is so integral, and it's becoming more a part of the work that one has to do as an activist, that the work is not only the social political work but also the spiritual work, for the support. So much is opening up. This too is a, it's terrible, it's ghastly, but on the other hand, thank God it's exposed.
Yes.
Our children have been failed by us, and thank goodness they've had the courage to say, this is what's happening to me. And especially the one who's spoken first.
Yeah.
And, but there's more. And as we've seen since 2015, our children have said loudly and clearly that so much is not okay. We've done a lot of work in this society, but there's so much more that needs to be done, and so many people have done nothing, and so many people have created disease in the world, also created structures that seem to be almost inconquerable, if there's such a word. But we have to, I think this moment is really showing all the fault lines. Everything is being exposed from within ourselves, individuals, in our households, and in the community. And it's, yeah, and I think, so as hard as it is, there's a blessing in that what has been in the dark is coming into the light. And we need, it's our challenge to work with it. It's our challenge to look at it. It's our challenge to be honest about it, to say how we feel, you know, that we're disappointed in the people who have misled us, that we're angry with them, that whatever it is that we feel, but also that we want to support and uplift and hold our children who've been hurt. We want to be very clear about our own culpability in the ways that we might be culpable. And certainly if we're not making an effort, and you know, it's something we said in the 80s, in the 70s in this country, that if you are silent and if you're sitting on a fence, you are not supporting the oppressed peoples in this country. This was our call to the world. And right now that same point comes home very powerfully for me. In the conversations that have arisen around this. That I appeal deeply to the people who's listening to this, that, you know, and listening, but they still feel a certain type of way, to understand that we can't be silent, we can't be waiting for the court ruling. We can't be saying, you know, we don't know, we didn't, like, we can't just wash our hands and look. There isn't space for observing when we talk about the abuse of children, especially. If this is the point at which you can be observing, then things are really sad. But before I get into any technicalities about how we understand and child abuse, I just want to say, with that human feeling of, you know, my appeal to people to think very carefully. Child abuse, whether you're talking about these children in particular or others, we have to be courageous enough, as hard as it is, we have to be courageous enough to step up for the children. We must be willing to protect them.
Yeah. But I also want to unpack silence. I hear what you're saying about, you know, silence being complicity, or, you know, when we abstain from taking a stand, you know, then you're for that, you know, the very thing that we're supposedly standing against. But when it comes to vulnerable, marginalized, you know, I don't know if marginalized is the word, but the vulnerable members of our community, of our society, because there is inequality as it stands, it's very difficult to break silence. And I, you know, and I have to say, because you know, my work as a musician, as an artist, is from the original music songwriting perspective. And in the last years, since I've become a mother, I very much have aligned that with my activism and work as a healer, all of that. So I tend to move in different circles, and also having an international career, it's quite different to say the jazz community here, the cover scene community, right? The
Mm-hmm.
entertainment kind of party
Yeah.
scene community. All of that, by the way, has its place. And, you know, I love everything that makes us the vibrant music industry that we are in terms of the talent and the offerings. But I have had to call out, because in the last years I've been working with amazing kind of younger musicians that come through jazz schools and you know, smaller music institutions who've not traveled, and the confidence and self-esteem isn't there, who are very vulnerable because they look to you as a mentor.
Yeah.
And I remember doing being on a panel. It was called Gender and Jazz at the SM Music College. I was shocked to hear the stories from the young women there, and the high, you know, to hear that but women have such a high dropout rate, sometimes getting paid less for the gig. You know, the kind of, you know, blow on my microphone kind of boys club, ha ha ha, slap each other on the back jokes. Even walking through the corridors and seeing only like male icons from our jazz music industry or the international, not a single picture, not even Satima B. Benjamin, Erica Lundi, not even Miriam Makeba, not even, literally all men. You see then that there is a sexism and an inequality, and there is the feminine is not acknowledged. The feminine is still, you know, how years back when jazz was seen as the devil's music and you stepped on in a slinky dress and the red lipstick, you know, you were likened to a prostitute. I am not saying that that's how everyone operates, but that is where I started to see shit that for me was just unheard of. It's like, you know, and calling people out, like, you know, don't you dare, how you know what I mean? And when I call them out, these eyes of disbelief, like, it's the first time ever that someone has actually reprimanded them, would say, hey, you're a mentor to these younger people. Hey, she's not a great musician for a girl. She's a great musician. She's talented. So that's the inequality I'm talking about, and that we women also, and now there's so many stories coming to me also since I've released this personal statement of, you know, men and women, different ages, saying that it's so difficult to speak up because that person is signing your paycheck for the gig, or has booked you for the contract, you know, to go on whatever, the cruise line or whatever. So it is difficult when there isn't, and for me, so it's not so much because, I was also asking, like, if you knew, like, how could you know? And this is what's been going on. But now the question is not how could you not say anything? How did you not break the silence? But it's more now the statement of we need to urgently create safe spaces that needs to be anonymous, where artists, where young people, whether you're a student or whether you've been doing this work for years, that you can share your experiences. You know, the venue, and whether it's like the venue's not paying you, the guy withheld the money, he wanted a sexual favor in exchange of, those things are not okay. But we're never going to change them if there isn't a safe space for that musician to say, or that actress to say, or actor, a place where they're not going to be, you know, expelled from the gig, or ousted, or lose their job, lose their work, lose their contract, where they can safely say, this is what's been happening. These are the people. This is what's been going down. That has to be put in place urgently.
Absolutely, Ernestine. It's what you're describing is, on one hand, labor exploitation to a certain extent. On the other hand, it's abuse of power and abuse of the vulnerability of people. And yes, and in circumstances, of course, it's very difficult for that person to speak up, because they actually know they would have done the job. They might even get kicked out before they get paid.
Mm-hmm.
And because the industry is also so loose, which is one of the issues, of course,
This
that
is the problem.
is an ongoing, it seems to be never ending, because our minister is not interested in, well, not, I shouldn't say our minister, but the various ministers that have been in the position of Minister of Arts and Culture hasn't really prioritized
Not at all.
regulating work in the sector. And it's like every other work environment. If you look at different industries, then the ways that the industry is set up can be set up so that unscrupulous people continue to treat people badly, continue to exploit people, especially when they're young, when they're talented, when they don't come from families with resources, when they're Black, when they're poor, when they don't have South African IDs and they come from another country as well.
Yes.
So
thank you for raising that. Yes.
You also have, you're at the mercy of having work because you've got a work permit, but where's your work? And so there's so much risks that people are running all the time. But they will run the risks because they don't have as much opportunity and somebody else is taking advantage of the position they're in. So yeah, there's a great need in this industry, but as I say, it's also something that's reflected in multiple industries in different ways. Forms are different, but you see it everywhere. And something needs to be done. Of course, this industry is one of the worst in terms of lack of regulation. Because there's no clarity on how much money would what's a decent payment for a gig, or what's a decent payment if you're a dancer and you're going to, you're freelancing. You just have to go with what people offer you. So there's no clear rates of pay and so on. And it means that people are put in very, very difficult positions.
100%. The protection is not there. It's like the Wild West, in terms of a sector, with the lack of legislation. Then you add to that the fact that we, as it are, we are unsalaried workers. So essentially, you're kind of always freelance or self-employed. I'm talking particularly about performing artists, I think studio, if you're working for a studio, you've got that 9-to-5 job or whatever, it's a little different. But then the performing artists are so vulnerable. You're going on tour, you're sleeping away from home. You might be rehearsing till 11, but you live in Langa, or you live in, I don't know, Plumstead or whatever, and you don't have a car. You're getting dropped by a band member or the musical director or whoever it is. And I'm making no gender, because for me, like this shit's happening on like across the board. I'm making no differentiation there. It's about the vulnerability and the heavy exploitation, but yes, more so for the women and the girls in this industry who are starting out, who needs to take the Uber back to wherever. And it's also because the industry as it is very male dominated. It has changed. I mean, I started in this industry at age 16, so I've been at it for a long time. I have seen the changes. It's been amazing to see, more academies come up, more women playing all kinds of instruments, and really being activists and being incredible role models. But, when did I start? In 1990, 91? It's kind of scary, like entering a room as a 16-year-old. You know what I mean?
Of course.
You have to be a strong character. You have to be super grounded, which thank God I am. But that takes work as well.
Yeah.
And it takes work to grow the confidence to speak up when something isn't right,
Hmm.
you know. I once had a manager, I was in Amsterdam, as I got into tour van, literally smacked me on the butt in jest.
Hmm.
And you know what I mean? I turned around and I smacked him through the face, which I don't think that he saw coming. Um, but those things are there's generally because we're in the creative sector, we're artists. It's not as formal as your 9 to 5 job in your organization and your workplace. You know, we're in the entertainment sector. It's so lost, you know, and
Hmm.
we've normalized that these things are okay when they really, really, really aren't. They really aren't.
Absolutely. And I just want to go back to the case in point, on that, not okayness. What I think people need to understand is, number one, our law actually says if a child tells you, or if you are aware of a child being abused, it is your responsibility to report it. So not reporting child abuse that you know about is an offense.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not a choice. It's not for you to be the judge and the jury on it. You have to report, and the police justice system, they must do their work to establish the truth. But the report must happen. And,
Yes.
and we tell children that your body is your body. We made a song about it. My body's my body. My body is nobody's body but mine.
Yes.
And we tell children that, and we tell them, if somebody touches you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, tell somebody. We need the adults that the children are going to tell to be aware that they have to do this, to know
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you must act when the child is talking to you. That it's not for you to mull over and determine the truth of the matter. It's for
Yes.
you to say, this is what I need to do,
Yes.
because that's my responsibility. The state has a responsibility and an obligation to protect children. And that is reflected most clearly in our Constitution, in the Bill of Rights. In Chapter 2 of the Bill of Rights, we have children's rights very clearly set out, and it's
Yeah.
reflected in the legislation.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
isn't a choice. It's all there, and it's passed on to us
Yeah.
through the law. The state is saying, all adults, this is the role that you should play in the society with
Yeah.
regard to child abuse. And I think people really need to understand that. It's a message that organizations like Molo Songololo have been spreading repeatedly for 40 odd years, but it's a message that's still not arrived.
No.
And we see that in people's responses. And we see it also in other instances, when we don't have empathy for certain situations because of people's identity, because of their class, because of their the color of their skin. They're not dark enough to matter, etc. So when we speak about people in LGBTIQ communities, again, then how we understand and value and respond to cases are influenced by our judgments a lot, in relation to those kinds of identities. So as a society, we need to, and that's why I just kind of got down to that crux of, this is what the law says. It's not really for you to determine, because we can't allow our prejudice to influence how we respond when a child is being harmed.
Right.
We just can't. It's not, and it's not my opinion. I'm communicating something that is in the law and
Yes.
is expected of us. And I think somehow people think it's a choice still. No, it's not a choice.
It's
Let's
not
be
a
clear
choice.
about that. you know, and then of course the next steps is that they need support. And as you rightfully say, because that is not in place, something that needs to be put in place is, where do you go for the support? So, you know, who can you go and report to? What is the independent structure that can be engaged, so that that structure is also not influenced by the power and influence dynamics within the industry, but the industry has a relation to that structure, you know. So in some industries you have an ombud as an independent arbiter, and I'm not suggesting an ombud, but I'm saying as to give an idea of what I'm referring to.
But there has to be a watchdog. There has to be that, you know,
some kind of independent body that people can know that, you know, if I go there, they're not in some clique that my story gets lost, which is what people experience in lots of business environments, that people will say, I've reported this to HR, but nothing has happened. And it's because HR gets paid by the bosses. So HR acts based sometimes on who are we talking about. But when it's the powerful people, they might be careful because it's their colleagues or the people they answer to. So yes, we need that kind of independent watchdog structure that is also coming in. But we also need a response that's the, you know, the compassionate response. The children need support. They need to know that this is not their fault. We need to learn to respond in that way, that when child reports to you, to say, I believe you, it's not your fault.
Yes.
So many of us know through our own personal experience, myself included, that that kind of sexual violence that you feel is your fault lives with you almost forever. And
it does.
And a lot of that is because of the ways that the world has responded, unspoken and spoken. We need to change that. Today, our children need to know that this is not your responsibility. It's not your fault. You did not do something to yourself. Somebody hurt you, and it's their fault that they hurt you. And
and we need to normalize talking about it so that we don't even have phrases like break the silence. We need to normalize talking about it, because I've watched the work that NGOs do in Molashongalolo, and, you know, but then you have teachers and you have parents, you have communities saying, why are you talking to the children about this?
Absolutely.
You know, we need to reckon as ogat maki, as, you know, a friend and I were chatting the other day, but we need to understand that the body is, my body is mine, your body is yours, and your body is not just a sexual object. You know, because we've sexualized the body, and we've mystified the body. We do not talk about it. And so if it's not even a part of your language, and you don't even have that thread of communication with the caregivers in your home, how are you as a child going to find the words to speak the unspeakable?
Absolutely.
And that is difficult. I had a terrible experience when I was very young, and I only told my parents when I was pregnant with my firstborn. And I think that there was also so much disassociation that you don't know how to come back to the house to say, this has just happened to me. You just actually don't even have the vocabulary. And I was talking to another musician friend yesterday who said the experience of her body also going through a pregnancy unleashed memories that were locked. And so that's also a part of what I've been sitting with. And I think many of us, because Interpol, is it true that Interpol calls us the rape capital of the world?
I don't
because
know.
I think that's just insane. And that we have apparently, 40% of the population has been through some form of sexual abuse, that is scary, because it means that when you go to Pick and Pay, you're walking amongst survivors. When you go to the bus, you on a bus or train, you're sitting amongst survivors. And so I think that that's also something that has it's shook up a lot of trauma for a lot of people, especially when you've been sitting and sharing space with someone for, in your career.
Yes.
Under the guise of protecting rights, under the guise of mentoring other. And it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And what I'm feeling is that there's so much of that sadness in the air as well, of people sitting with their own stuff that this is triggered,
Ernestine, absolutely. I mean, for myself, last year I was at UCT. I was still studying, and when Uyinene went missing and was found, and that just re-traumatized me. It didn't re-traumatize me, but it triggered all trauma.
Yes.
In a way that I was astonished.
Yes.
Yes, I understand this. I do, I share with people, as you know, trauma release practices and so on. But it shocked me, and because I'm doing this kind of work, I recognize what was happening. But I was surprised it was happening.
Yes.
And I could not go to the marches, and I wanted to go, but I could not go. I thought, Lorna, you were really in a state. If you must go to a march, and really I'm very empathic, and just in being in that space with lots of other traumatized women, I'd be sick for ages. And so I went to my granddaughter's preschool, and they had a protest, and I went and protested with the Littlies, which was something much more manageable. And and also very powerful.
I get that. It's so interesting. Yeah, sorry.
So the trauma, these circumstances that are so intense, which of course there's so much of this news all the time in our country. So it is quite bad. I don't know if that's what Interpol says, but we have a problem. And there is a statistic that's, we don't have accurate stats on rape, but there is one that says 1 in 3 women have been raped. And then we in fact know that many women have been raped more than once. So even our 1 in 3 statistic is painting a better picture than the reality.
And like you say, it's underreported. We don't know what the stats are on men and young boys. And we have very low conviction rates, and it's no wonder when we have a legal system, well, firstly, a country where someone who even has sexual offenses against him, whether it's allegations or there have been convictions of rape, to be your president is the most shocking thing. That is the climate of the country that we're in. That we would, as you say, march for Uyinene and so many of the countless victims just last year, and I mean, how many marches have we been to, and how many rallies have we organized? And the promises of no bail for sexual offenders, and literally on Monday, the news that this man, the accused, the perpetrator, is out on 1,000 rand bail. And I'm looking at the comments here also, because there are a few people saying, and just that reminder that as we walk amongst survivors, we walk along amongst perpetrators, and to be also cognizant of the fact that of that cycle of survival becoming predator, and again, I think it's so important that these conversations are not just happening at all levels of society, but that, I don't want to see another ad about Chicken Licken or KFC or Surf Omo or whatever. I want to see this shit spoken about in media, on TV, in the billboards. When I went to the States, a few years ago. I was there for 3 weeks, and part of the tour was also visiting some schools. I mean, on the one hand, the States is quite like they don't know too much about what's happening outside of their country, but my God, you ask anyone about, I mean, they know everything off by heart. They know what the Pledge of Allegiance are. They know the Bill of Rights. They, um, as you were saying earlier, when we hear about sexual abuse or a crime against a child, it's often this like umming and ahhing kind of
Yes,
situation. And yet you know exactly what to do when your car's stolen.
true.
There it's not black and white for you. I don't understand that. So we don't have the culture of education at every level of society, the home, the school, the things that we see, the magazines we read, the content being created, the policies being made, but then also the instituting, the education that those policies must come to the ground so that your first point of contact, if you've had a violation in any way, that you feel safe. You know that that person knows the law. You know that that officer is going to treat you with utmost respect and firstly compassion.
Hmm.
I'm not seeing that in this country, which is why I wanted to unpack the silence we speak about, because there's so many complexities as to why people don't break the silence.
Absolutely. Um, it's also, you mentioned this earlier, in families, you know, where children aren't permitted to speak about sex. Well, they're not even taught the correct words for their
Yeah.
body. So being told that it's a taboo subject means that when a child is trying to actually get to the part that's the problem, they've already been shut down.
Yeah.
If they're trying to articulate something. And others won't even try to articulate because they've got the message so loud and clear that we don't talk about it. They're not even trying to say anything.
Yeah.
And that is also part of the problem, which needs attention. And I think, you know, if we look at our current society, I think there's a lot more body positivity and
Yes.
gender fluidity and awareness, that possibly these will be better parents, because there's more conversation with the young people, with teens, with young adults, than I think there was for a good number of years, couple of decades. And so possibly they'll have the courage to have some of those conversations, or there'd be more conversations with children, and there'd be more parents willing to engage and also challenge structures to have these conversations. Because I think there's been very few parents that have been willing to. I know for myself as a parent, I've had conversations with my daughters. I think some too early, and others I have had maybe too late. Yeah. So, but trying to do that, but only being able to do that as a parent. You know, that the schools that they went to were not interested in these conversations. So it's left, if I look at my generation, our generation, it's left to the individual. And that is also not helpful. We need a lot more talking. In general, it's tragic that we're still talking about break the silence. You know, I think we've been saying that for a good number of decades. And certainly more silences have been broken, but we have a long road from where we need to be.
Lorna,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much time we have left for this hour. Tina's there. She's just come up. What is the time now before we get kicked out at 5? Somebody tell us what the time is, please. And then also to say that I will save this live. We will lose the comments, unfortunately, when a live stream gets saved. You lose the comments. But I'm so keen to hear what everyone's been saying. I can't follow everyone at every point of the conversation, but you can, once I've saved it to IGTV on my feed, you can, you know, go back there and, oh, it's 17:02, which means, yeah, we're going to probably get kicked out.
Yeah.
Tina is going to do part 2 with me.
Yeah.
And sister and fellow Grassy Parker, because we come from the same hometown. I want to really just thank you for being here with me and holding me through this. It's been an incredibly heart-sore week, and also holding Tina and everyone else here in the comments with your expertise. Do you have time to come on for a few more minutes when this live kicks out? Because it will. And I want to ask everyone else, please, also to come back on, because I was really interested in the finger hold for sadness, which is something that we can kind of implement immediately as a, an exercise that can help us with trauma and help us with sadness.
Yes. So shall I just?
I think that those.
Shall I begin to just
You
explain
can start. I'm just. Yes. Yeah.
So
if we get kicked out, and then we'll just start again. But please go ahead.
So we have 5 fingers on our hand. Everybody is aware of them. And in certain practices, you can hold your fingers to release emotions. So we hold the thumb to release feelings of grief and sadness, tears and loss. We hold the index finger to release feelings of fear and panic. We hold the middle finger to release feelings of anger and rage.
No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. Anger.
And we hold the ring finger to release feelings of anxiety, nervousness, feeling preoccupied, worry. And then we hold the small finger to release feelings of low self-esteem, feeling unworthy, feeling small, feeling like a victim. So for those who understand what meridians or energy channels are, we are really working with the meridians to release and unblock emotions.
Yeah. We've lost Lorna, I think. I'm not sure if that means that we've used our full hour for the live stream, or if it's just a Wi-Fi connection issue on my side or her side. We've lost Lorna, but I really want to thank everyone for coming on board, so that we can just exhale together, really. And I want to thank Lorna for her time. Elna, you have been amazing. Elna Basak, yes, I know that you stand in solidarity with me against, I see these comments. And I want to thank you all for being so brave, so that we can start to talk about these things. I'm going to save this on my IGTV feed. Please come back on. I'm going to start a new live video after this with Tina Scow.